And here we go on our Tuesday edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast, our Hey Mary Kay edition. We are going to get to our football insider questions here shortly, but Mary Kay, I wanted to touch on a topic that came up today on Monday when we had Kevin Stefanski on Zoom. It was about Myles Garrett. So he basically said, I don't have the transcript in front of me, but essentially called Myles Garrett their best player. And you followed up with him and you asked, did he mean their best player on defense or their best player overall? So I wanted to ask you, Mary Kay. Hey, Mary Kay, is Myles Garrett the Browns' best player?
It is a good question. And I thought that, that it deserved a little follow-up, because I thought that when Kevin Stefanski said Myles Garrett is our best player, I really thought that he meant on the whole entire team, but I wasn't positive. Now, of course, he wouldn't answer that. He said, I'm just going to let you guys speculate on that. So I would say, I think he was trying to say, Myles is the best player on the football team. I guess I would have to agree with that at this point. Yeah, I would have to say that, because I think Baker's still coming into his own. We know who the candidates are, right? It's Baker Mayfield, it's Nick Chubb, it is Odell Beckham Jr., maybe Jarvis Landry, right?
Kareem.
You'd have to throw Kareem in there. And so we should probably do a poll on this, right, Dan? We should do a poll on for our subscribers or on Twitter, just to see, who everyone thinks the best player on the Cleveland Browns is. But it's hard to argue with Myles based on everything that we've seen over the last couple of years. I will say, though, that he really dropped off last year after he got COVID. So I'm anxious to see him put together another full season. He's only had one full season, and he was lights out that year, 13 and a half sacks. I feel like it's going to be more like that this year, where he's going to have a long, good season where he gets to the finish line and he has 1 million sacks, probably breaks the record, and really challenges for NFL Defensive Player of the Year. So at this moment, I am going to say yes, that Myles Garrett is not only the best player on defense, but the best player on the team. What do you think, Dan?
First of all, let me read Kevin's quote here. So the question was about Myles' performance. And then he said, Myles was outstanding. Really, the entire defense was outstanding. But if you point at an individual, it would certainly be Myles in that effort yesterday. He is our best player. I think he knows that. We know that. And the other team knows that. And then he goes on to say how he's going to get more attention. So you could really kind of spin it both ways. It was kind of couched within an answer about the defense, but then also he did just come out and say he is our best player. And Kevin doesn't usually slip up. He usually makes sure every word that needs to be in a sentence ends up in that sentence. But anyway, again, when you go through those candidates, right? So Baker's not there yet. I think maybe it comes down to, just based on pure talent alone, Myles, Odell, and probably Nick Chubb. So I think I would go with Myles. I think that's where I would go. I think he is the best player on the team right now, just because Odell is still coming back from injury. Nick Chubb is incredible, but I guess I'm kind of weighting the pass rusher over the running back. Mm-hmm. And I think that, the fact that Baker's a quarterback is part of the reason he's in this discussion. So I'm going to go with Myles Garrett, because I think Myles at his peak is that player we saw yesterday who got 4.5 sacks and kind of had everybody saying, well, he can do even better than that. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it too. Myles at his peak is just different than everybody else on this football team.
Yeah, I would agree with that, except for I actually do think that the person who could go head to head with him in that regard would be Odell Beckham Jr.
Yeah.
We have not seen the best of Odell Beckham Jr. at all in a Cleveland Browns uniform yet. We have seen flashes of it. We certainly did not see it in the crazy Freddie Kitchens year, right? We did not get to see who Odell Beckham Jr. really is in that year. And we really saw glimpses of it last season. We saw him take over the Dallas game and basically win it by himself. But we've only seen it in small doses. We haven't seen a full season of amazing Odell. And, maybe this will be the year that we see that. And maybe when we get to the end of this season, maybe we'll think differently about this and we'll have a different answer. But right in this moment, because he hasn't been able to live up to his full potential yet in this offense, I'm going to have to go with Myles right now. And so it will be incumbent upon OBJ to change our minds by the end of the year.
Yeah. And by the way, like, Kevin didn't say anything wrong. Like, I don't want people to hear this and be like, oh, I can't believe Kevin said something like that. He didn't say anything wrong. It's an interesting discussion. Who's the Browns' best player? And if he said Myles Garrett is their best player, I mean, who's really going to argue with that?
Yeah, I don't think you really can argue with it right now for the reasons that we have mentioned. But I think there are a few players on this football team that can challenge him for that title. As we've mentioned, Odell can, and who knows, maybe Baker can as he goes along. You know, that's the goal. I mean, they were both number 1 overall picks. So, you know, if Baker continues to come along the way that he has and plays at the level that he started playing at midway through last season and continues that on and is a top 10 quarterback, then, you know, then he might get in that discussion too. But for right now, especially coming off a game like that, which is foremost in our minds, I think we have to go Myles.